The night was quiet on Outpost 9, one of the farthest human settlements on the edge of the galaxy. Most shops were closed, and the streetlights flickered under the weight of the dusty wind. Ethan Myers, a cargo mechanic and repairman, walked alone, his boots crunching softly against the gravel road. He carried a small bag of supplies, just some food and parts he picked up after a long day of work. Ethan wasn't used to trouble. The outpost was poor, sure, but not dangerous. People mostly kept to themselves. That's why he didn't notice the shadow behind the dumpster at first. But as he passed the alley, he heard the sharp whisper of movement, fast, small. Then, something cold and hard pressed against his side. "Don't move," a young voice said. Ethan froze. He slowly turned his head. There, barely reaching his waist, stood a small alien boy. His skin was pale violet, marked with dust and grime. He wore torn clothes that hung loosely from his bony frame. His eyes, large and glowing slightly in the dark, were wild with fear. And in his shaking hands, he held a rusty knife pointed at Ethan's chest. Ethan didn't raise his arms. He didn't step back. Instead, he looked down at the boy not with anger, but with surprise. "You sure you want to do this, kid?" Ethan asked calmly. The boy flinched. Just give me food. I don't want to hurt you." Ethan saw now that the boy's arms were trembling, not from rage, but hunger. He could barely keep the knife straight. His fingers were thin like wires, and his legs looked like they might give out at any second. Ethan slowly opened the bag he carried. "Look, I've got bread. Dried meat. You can have it. No need to use the knife." The boy didn't move. His eyes darted between the food and Ethan's face, confused and unsure. "You don't trust me, do you?" Ethan said. The boy started, but then his knees gave out. The knife clattered to the ground. The boy collapsed, face first, into the dirt. "Damn it," Ethan whispered and rushed forward. He knelt beside the boy and gently turned him over. The alien's chest was rising and falling. He was alive, just fainted. Up close, Ethan could see now how bad it was. The boy had bruises, fresh and old. His face was scratched and his feet were bare and bloody. Ethan looked around. No one? Just silence and wind. He didn't think twice. He picked the boy up in his arms and carried him back to his small shelter at the edge of the colony. Inside his metal-walled shelter, Ethan laid the boy on his old couch. He covered him with a blanket and lit the heater. The room was simpler workbench, a cot, a water tank, but it was warm and safe. The boy didn't wake for a while. Ethan sat nearby, thinking, who was this kid? Why was he alone? Why had no one helped him? When the boy finally stirred, he sat up fast, panic in his eyes. "Where what?" "You're safe," Ethan said. "Quickly, you fainted. I brought you here. You're okay." The boy grabbed the edge of the couch, ready to bolt. "I'm not keeping you," Ethan said. "Door's right there. But maybe, eat something first." He handed him a piece of dried meat and a small bottle of clean water. The boy stared at it like it was poison, but hunger won. Slowly, he took a bite, then another. Then another. His hands shook as he ate, but he didn't stop. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. The boy didn't answer. "You can call me Ethan," he offered. Still no reply. "Shh. You're not the first to try and rob someone," Ethan said, half smiling, "but most don't pass out mid-mugging." That made the boy pause. His eyes flicked up to Ethan. A tiny bit of shame there, and something else. Maybe curiosity. "I'm not going to turn you in," Ethan said. "I don't think you're a criminal. I think you're just a scared kid." Finally, the boy spoke. "I didn't want to hurt you." "I believe you. I was just hungry. I figured." Silence again, but it was a softer silence now. "My name is," the boy said, but then hesitated. He looked unsure, like the name was something painful to share. Ethan didn't. Push him. It's okay. You can tell me when you're ready. The boy looked around the room. It wasn't much, but it was clean, dry, and warm. Better than the streets. I don't have anywhere else to go, he whispered. Ethan gave a gentle nod. Then stay here tonight. We'll figure things out in the morning. And for the first time, the boy didn't argue. He lay back on the couch, still holding the food in his hands. He didn't even finish it, just clutched it like treasure and slowly drifted off to sleep. Ethan sat beside him, watching. In his life, he had fixed broken engines, crushed scrap ships, even survived a plasma leak once, but this felt different. This boy was broken in a way Ethan didn't know how to repair. But maybe, just maybe, he could try. Ethan woke early. The next morning, the small metal heater hummed softly in the corner of the room. The boy was still asleep on the couch, curled tightly under the blanket like a frightened animal. His small arms clutched the food Ethan had given him the night before. As if letting go meant losing everything, Ethan didn't wake him. Instead, he started making a simple breakfast warm porridge with some fruit pieces. He wasn't sure if the alien boy would like it, but it was better than dry meat. While stirring the pot, Ethan stole glances at the child, trying to understand him. The boy looked fragile, younger than he'd guessed. Maybe 10, maybe younger. His violet skin was marked with faint blue veins, and now that he was clean, Ethan could see more bruises than he could count. Someone had hurt him, badly. The boy stirred. His large eyes blinked open slowly, adjusting to the light. For a moment, panic flared across his face. "It's okay," Ethan said softly, not turning around. "You're still safe. Still here." The boy sat up fast, the blanket falling to the ground. He looked around as if checking to make sure he wasn't trapped. Ethan pointed to the bowl on the table. "Made something. It's not great, but it's warm." The boy didn't move. He kept his eyes locked on Ethan. "You think I poisoned it?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. The boy shook his head slowly, then stood barefoot and walked toward the table. He sat, picked up the bowl with both hands, and took a small bite. Then another, and another. "You eat like you haven't eaten in days," Kay said quietly. "I haven't," the boy replied, still chewing. Ethan waited a few seconds. "You want to tell me your name today?" The boy hesitated. He looked at the spoon, then slowly said, "Takeo." Ethan nodded. "Takeo. That's a strong name." "It was my brother's name too," Takeo said. "He gave it to me. Said I'd need it more than he did." That sentence made Ethan pause. He didn't ask more. Not yet. He could see the pain hiding behind the boy's eyes. "Where are your parents?" Ethan finally asked, his voice gentle. "T-E-K-O." Swallowed hard. Gone. There was no emotion in his voice. It sounded like he had said that word many times. "They were taken, or killed. I don't know. I ran." Ethan leaned forward. "And your brother?" Takeo didn't answer. He just looked down into the empty bowl. That was all Ethan needed to know. He stood and walked to the storage box near the corner of the room. He pulled out a clean shirt and a pair of small pants-soled clothes from a supply crate. "Meant for emergency refugees. These might be big," he said, placing them beside Takeo, "but better than what you're wearing now." Takeo glanced at them, surprised. "You're giving me clothes." Ethan smiled. "Well, I figured you might not want to wear torn rags forever." Takeo hesitated again. Then he picked them up and clutched them to his chest like they were gold. After a quick wash, Takeo changed into the clean clothes. They were baggy, but made him look less like a ghost. His face, though still thin, seemed a little less afraid now. Ethan opened the main door and let the morning sunlight in. Takeo stood at a distance, peeking through. "This is Outpost 9, Ethan explained. "Not much, but it's home. People here don't talk much, and they don't help much either. But they're not cruel." Teko stepped outside slowly. The wind touched his face, and he closed his eyes for a second. He hadn't felt warmth in so long. Ethan handed him a bottle of water. "So, Teko, tell me, how long were you living on the streets?" Teko sat on the metal step, thinking. "Since the attack, maybe 15 days, maybe more. Where did it happen?" Teko pointed toward the far edge of the hills. "Over there. You were hiding in a broken ship. Just me, my mom, my little sister, and my brother. Then the lights came. Bad ships. They took the others. I ran mercs." Ethan asked. Slavers. Teko nodded slowly. "They had sharp claws. Not like us. They weren't from my world." Ethan clenched his jaw. He had heard of such attacks. Some colonies were so far from the core that they didn't get protection. And some alien races were easy targets, especially those too weak to fight back. "They were supposed to help us," Teko whispered. "The humans, that's what my mom said, but they never came." Ethan didn't know what to say. Maybe they never heard the distress call. Or maybe no one cared enough to act. But now he was here. "You're wrong about one thing," Ethan finally said. Teko looked up. "You said the humans didn't come. But I'm here now." Teko stared at him. Then, for the first time, something strange appeared in his eyes. Something Ethan hadn't seen before. Hope. Not full, not bright, but a spark. A small light. "You gonna stay?" Teko asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at the boy. At the broken, tired, scared soul in front of him. "Yeah," he finally said. "I think I'm gonna stay. Help you find whoever's left of your family." Teko blinked. "Why?" Ethan gave a small shrug. "Because someone should." 2 days passed. Teko had stopped flinching every time Ethan walked into the room. He even smiled once only for a second, but it was real. He was still quiet, still cautious, but the fear that once lived in his eyes had started to fade. Ethan knew what needed to be done. They couldn't just stay hidden inside the metal shelter. If there was even the smallest chance that Teko's family was still alive, then waiting was the same as giving up. "We'll go at first light," Ethan said as he prepared his bag. Teko sat on the edge of the bed, pulling on his oversized boots. "You believe they might still be there?" "I believe we'll never know unless we try," Ethan replied. They left before sunrise. The colony faded behind them as they moved toward the hills. The terrain was dry and broken. Rocks jutted out like old bones, and the wind carried the smell of rust and sand. As they walked, Teko told him more. About the broken transport ship where they had been hiding. About how his brother used to sneak out for food. How they used to take turns keeping watch through the cracks in the hull. When the raiders came, Teko said softly, "My sister screamed. I grabbed her hand, but someone pulled her away. I tried to run back, but then I ran away instead." His voice shook. He stopped walking. "I was scared," he said. "I left them." Ethan placed a firm hand on Teko's shoulder. "You didn't leave them. You survived. That takes courage, too." Teko looked down at his feet. He didn't believe that yet. But he kept walking. They climbed over a final ridge and there it was. The wrecked ship. It lay half buried in sand and ash. Its hull split open like a torn can. Burn marks and laser holes covered its surface. The back thruster was missing, probably ripped apart in the crash. Ethan walked slowly, scanning the area. Teko followed in silence, his hands clenched at his sides. As they got closer, the wind grew still, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. They stepped inside. The walls were blackened. The floor was cracked. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't quick. Ethan looked for signs, footprints, blood trails, anything. But time and wind had erased much of the past. Tico walked to the corner. He knelt. "This is where my sister slept," he said. He reached under a metal plate and pulled out something small, a soft doll made from scrap. Cloth and buttons. Ethan didn't speak. Teko held the doll tightly, then stood. He walked deeper into the ship, past collapsed beams and torn walls. And then he stopped at the back of the ship, beside a scorched panel. Was a small pile of fabric and bones. Taco dropped the doll. He didn't scream, he didn't cry. He just fell to his knees and stared. Ethan knelt beside him. The remains were small, too small. "A child, your sister?" Ethan asked quietly. Teko nodded once. Ethan closed his eyes and let the silence speak for a moment. Then he placed a hand on Teko's back. "I'm sorry," he said. Teko didn't reply. His eyes stayed locked on the tiny shape in front of him. But Ethan saw at his shoulders trembling, lips pressed tight, tears refusing to fall. He wasn't just sad, he was breaking. "I should have stayed," Teko whispered. "I should have fought. I should have died with her." Ethan turned him gently to face him. "No, you survived. That means you get to remember her. You get to carry her with you, but I didn't save her." "You were a child," Ethan said. "She wouldn't want you blaming yourself." For the first time, Teko cried. Silent tears rolled down his violet cheeks. Ethan sat beside him, not saying anything more. Sometimes, silence is the only comfort that matters. They buried the remains outside the wreck, under a small rock pile. Teko placed the doll on top. He didn't speak as he knelt, but Ethan heard him whisper something in his native language, "Goodbye." They stayed there until the sun began to set. On the way back, Ethan noticed something strange. Near the edge of the crash site, close to the rocks, were faint marks in the sand. Not natural, more like tracks. Small, uneven, as if someone had limped away. "Hey," Ethan called. "Teko, come look at this." Teko ran over. He stared at the tracks. "These weren't here before," he said, eyes wide. "They lead away from the crash," Ethan said, "and not toward the colony." Teko dropped to his knees, touching the sand. "These are hers," he whispered. "These are my mom's tracks." Ethan frowned. "Are you sure?" "She had a limp," Teko said. "From the crash, this is how she walked." Suddenly, the sadness in his eyes turned to fire. "She's alive," he said. Ethan smiled slightly. "Then we follow the tracks." The boy stood tall. His pain was still there, but now, there was purpose too. And that was more powerful than anything else. The desert wind howled as Ethan and Teko followed the tracks into the rocky terrain. The sun had begun to dip behind the cliffs, casting long, sharp shadows across the land. The prints in the sand were faint and broken, as if the one who left them had struggled with every step. But Teko didn't hesitate. Every few minutes, he would crouch low, touch the sand with his fingers, and look ahead. Ethan kept a few steps behind, scanning the area for any signs of danger. The deeper they went, the more Ethan admired the boy's strength. He wasn't the same scared child who had pointed a knife at him days ago. He was something more now, a brother, a son, a survivor. "We're close," Teko whispered, staring at the ground. "She stopped here for a while." "How do you know?" Ethan asked, kneeling beside him. "There are 2 sets of marks here. Her footprints and something else." Ethan looked closer. It was true. The footprints were deep, wide impressions boots. Not hers. Someone else had been here. "They found her," Ethan said slowly. Teko's eyes grew wide. "You think they took her?" "It's possible," Ethan said. "Maybe mercenaries. Maybe someone worse." Teko looked like he might cry again. But instead, he clenched his fists. "We have to find her." Ethan nodded. "We will." They moved forward again, now more carefully. The path narrowed, winding between sharp stones and thick, dry brush. The tracks eventually stopped near a crumbling ruin, what looked like the remains of an old mining shack. Ethan raised a hand. "Wait here." He stepped forward slowly, checking. The area, it was quiet. It's too quiet inside the ruin. The roof had caved in long ago. Old crates and shattered tools lay scattered around. But in the middle of the rubble, something glinted in the fading light. Ethan bent down and picked it up. A small bracelet, made of dull silver wire, with 3 tiny glass beads, green, blue, and red. "Teco," he called out, stepping back. The boy ran over and stopped in his tracks when he saw the bracelet. He froze. His lips trembled. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it from Ethan's hand. "This was hers," Teco whispered. "She wore it every day." Ethan looked around. She must have dropped it during a struggle. Teco clutched the bracelet tightly, pressing it to his chest. "She was here," he said. "She was really here. Then we know she's still alive," Ethan said gently. "Someone took her from here. But that means she didn't die." Teco's knees gave out and he sat on the ground, still holding the bracelet. This time, he didn't cry. Instead, he just stared forward, deep in thought. "She always told me to stay quiet," Teco said. "To hide? To run when I heard danger. I used to think she was scared, but now I think she was brave." "She was protecting you," Ethan said. "And now it's your turn to protect her." Teco looked up. "But how? We don't even know who took her." Ethan crouched beside him and pointed toward the horizon. "Those boot tracks headed east. That means a vehicle picked her up, probably from one of the mercenary camps outside. The colony, if we follow the road markers, we might find one." Teco nodded slowly. He stood again, stronger than before. "Let's go." They walked into the night, following the rusted steel posts that marked old supply paths. Teco kept a bracelet wrapped around his wrist like a piece of armor. As the stars came out, Ethan decided they would rest briefly. They set up a small campfire beside a tall rock, hidden from the open plain. Ethan warmed a bit of food, while Teco sat staring into the flames. "She used to sing to us," Teco said quietly. "We were cold. Or scared." She had this soft hum in her voice. "It made me feel like nothing could ever hurt us." Ethan listened in silence. "She always smelled like the yellow flowers back home," Teco added. "I haven't smelled them since the crash." "That smell stays with you," Ethan said. "Even if the flowers are gone." Teco looked at him. "Did you have a mom?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah. She passed when I was young. But I still remember her laugh. Sometimes I hear it in my sleep." Teco gave a small, tired smile. They didn't speak after that. They didn't need to. The fire cracked softly, and for the first time in days, Teco didn't wake up in the middle of the night. He slept deeply, the bracelet still on his wrist. Ethan sat beside him, wide awake, watching, listening, waiting. He didn't know what they would find tomorrow. But he knew one thing. He was no longer just helping a lost child. He was helping a son find his mother. And he would not stop. Not now, not ever. Morning sunlight broke through the desert haze, painting the rocks gold. Ethan packed their small camp quickly. Teco stood silently nearby, bracelet tight on his wrist and eyes sharper than ever. They both knew time was short. The boot tracks they found near the ruin weren't ordinary. Ethan had recognized the shape of mercenaries' armor tread. Heavy, industrial, built for desert terrain. And that meant only one thing. She was taken, Ethan had told Teco. But maybe not too far. Teco didn't say much. He just nodded and walked. They moved east now, deeper into open land. The path became rough and uneven. Rusted signs pointed to abandoned mining zones, areas once active during Earth's expansion into the stars. But now, only a few outlaws and mercenary groups made these zones home as they crossed an old, dried riverbed. Ethan spotted something. Tire tracks. He crouched and brushed the dust away. The shape was clear. 4 thick tires, armored. Recent tooth of sand hadn't fully covered them yet. They passed here maybe a day ago. Ethan muttered, "T-E-K-O," leaned in. She could still be with them. Ethan nodded. If they took her. For labor or trade, yes. Teko's eyes hardened. Then we keep going. The trail led them toward a jagged cliff wall. Hidden near the base was a narrow path between rocks, barely wide enough for a vehicle. Ethan followed it carefully. One hand on the stun blade clipped to his belt as they came around the bend. Teko froze. There, he whispered. In the distance stood a crude outpost, metal walls made from scrap. Smoke rising from its towers. Armed figures patrolled the perimeter. The red skull symbol painted across the gate confirmed Ethan's fears. Red Claws, a notorious group of rogue mercs, known for kidnapping, slave trading, and worse. Ethan crouched and pulled Teko down beside him. We have to be careful. This isn't a place we can just walk into. Teko's small fists clenched. We have to get her. We will, Ethan assured him. But smart, not fast. They waited until sunset. The shadows grew long, and guards changed shifts. Ethan used his old binoculars to watch their movements, counting how many came and went. He saw cages several, and in one of them, a figure, small, slender, pale violet skin. Teko, Ethan whispered. I think I see her. Teko grabbed the binoculars and looked. His breath caught. She was sitting in a corner of the cage, holding her knees. Her clothes were torn. Her face was bruised, but she was alive. Mom, Teko whispered, voice cracking. That's her. Ethan saw the boy's hands shaking and placed his hand on his shoulder. We're getting her out tonight, Ethan said, but I'll need you to be brave. I am, Teko said without hesitation. As night fell, Ethan and Teko snuck closer, using the rocks and shadows for cover. Ethan had done missions like this before during his military years, silent infiltration, quick recovery. But this wasn't war. This was personal. He carefully disabled one of the fence sensors with a short electric pulse. They slipped through a broken vent shaft and dropped into the back storage area. The place smelled like oil, blood, and smoke, creeping along the wall. Ethan counted 2 guards near the cages. He handed Teko a small shock pebble. If one comes close, throw it at his boots. It'll freeze his legs for a few seconds. That's all we'll need. Teko nodded, his grip tight. Ethan moved first, silent as a ghost. He reached the cage and knelt beside it. Teko's mom, T whispered. The woman looked up fast, her eyes wide. She didn't recognize him. Your son is here, Ethan said. He's alive. We're taking you home. A single tear slid down her cheek. Then a shout. Hey! A guard had spotted Teko. Ethan reacted instantly. He hit the cage lock with his blade, sparking it open. He grabbed the woman's arm and pulled her out. Teko threw the shock pebble. Crack. The guard's legs stiffened. He stumbled and fell. Just as the other raised a blaster, Ethan charged, shoulder first, knocking the second guard into the wall before he could fire. One quick punch to the side of the head dropped him cold. Teko, move. The boy ran to his mother and wrapped his arms around her. She gasped. Teko, is it really you? I found you, he cried. Later, Ethan yelled, We've got to go. They bolted through the hallway. An alarm blared behind them, red lights flashing. Footsteps followed. Ethan kicked open the vent door, shoved Teco and his mom through first, and then crawled behind them. Bullets hit the metal as they jumped down into the desert. They didn't stop running. Not until the Merc camp was far behind them. Not until they reached the rocks. Not until they collapsed, gasping under the stars. They were safe. For now, Teco held his mother like he would never let go again, and Ethan, his chest heaving, looked up at the stars. He had done many things in his life, but this felt like the most important. The stars above were silent witnesses as Ethan, Teco, and his mother sat hidden behind tall stone ridges, catching their breath. The desert wind was cold, but it carried something they hadn't felt in days. Hope. But it didn't last long. She's not the only one they took. Teco whispered, staring at the ground. My little brother. He's still out there. Ethan looked over sharply. What? You said he. I thought he was dead, Teco interrupted. But my mother said he was taken by different men. She saw it before they knocked her out. Ethan turned to the exhausted woman, her face pale and bruised. She gave a weak nod. They pulled him away, screaming. She rasped. A group in different armor. Fancier, organized, not mercs. Traitors. Ethan's stomach twisted. That meant only one thing. Slav. He stood up slowly and scanned the horizon. Teo stood too. We have to go after him. I know, Ethan replied, voice firm. But we can't charge in like before. These people, these auctioneers, they hide in shadows. If we're going to find your brother, we need help. But who'll help us? Teco's mother asked, her voice shaking. No one ever helped us before. Ethan gave a grim smile. You haven't met the right human yet. Back at Outpost 9, Ethan contacted an old friend, Mira, a former intelligence officer who now ran an underground network that helped slaves escape. She owed Ethan a favor, and she didn't ask questions. I've got a tip, Mira said over the cracked radio. There's an illegal auction happening tonight, deep beneath Sector 12. Only high-level bidders allowed in. Very hush-hush. Do they take children? Ethan asked. There was a pause. They take anything, she said coldly. You're going in. I'm not letting that kid get sold. 2 monsters. Then you'll need a disguise. And credits, lots of them. Ethan sighed. Send me what you can. I'll handle the rest. By nightfall, Ethan stood outside a hidden entrance carved into a mountainside. Beside him, Teco wore a hood, eyes full of fire. His mother stayed behind at the shelter they couldn't risk bringing her. You sure you want to do this? Ethan asked. Teco didn't flinch. He's my brother. Inside the tunnel, guards in black armor checked IDs and scanned weapons. Ethan flashed a fake badge Mira had provided. One guard hesitated, then waved him through. They walked down metal stairs that echoed with every step. Then they saw it. The underground. Auction hall. Cages lined the walls filled with aliens of all kinds. Some were old, some young. All were afraid. Men in suits and cloaks whispered and pointed, holding electronic pads that displayed prices. Teko's single quotes. Look there, he whispered, tugging Ethan's sleeve in the farthest cage pressed. Against the bars was a small boy, violet-skinned, no older than 6. He was crying quietly, rocking back and forth. Teco stepped forward, but Ethan stopped him. Not yet. One wrong move, and we're all dead. They moved through the crowd, acting like buyers. Ethan kept one hand on the small blaster hidden in his coat. Then he saw a name flash on one of the screens. Lot 47. Young male, healthy genetics, minimal training. Starting price, 400 credits. It was Teco's brother. They had to act fast, but bidding had already begun. Ethan turned to Teco. Listen, I'm going to make a bid. When they open the cage, you run to him. Hold his hand. Don't let go. No matter what. What if they shoot? They won't, Ethan said. Because I won't give them the chance. He stepped forward and raised his hand. 600 credits? He shouted. The crowd turned. A few scoffed. Others smiled. No one outbid him. The auctioneer nodded. Sold. The cage creaked open. Teko didn't wait. He ran. Zarin. He shouted, Zirin. The little boy looked up and burst into tears. Teko. They collided in a tight hug. The whole room stared. But then someone shouted, That's not a buyer. That's a child. Alarms rang. The guards reached for their guns. Ethan didn't hesitate. He drew his blaster and fired into the air. Everyone froze. Panic erupted. Bitter screamed and ran for the exits. Guards tried to close in, but Ethan moved fast. He knocked to a side, grabbed both boys, and ran toward the back exit. Smoke bombs exploded behind Himira's final gift. They burst in too. The cool night air, coughing but alive, Myra waited with a skimmer. Get in, she shouted. They jumped aboard. The vehicle sped off into the dark, engines roaring. Safe at last, Teko cradled his little brother. Both crying quietly in the back seat, Ethan looked at them and finally allowed himself to breathe. You really came back? Zirin whispered to his brother. I promised. Teko replied, holding his hand tight. Mira glanced at Ethan. You've just picked a fight with some powerful people. I don't care, he said. I'd do it again. Because? What he saw in those boys' eyes? That was worth more than any war he'd ever fought. The skimmer glided smoothly over the desert, away from the chaos of the auction and back toward Outpost 9. The stars above blinked gently. As if watching the three figures curled together in the back seat, two alien boys and one human man, who had changed their lives. Teko held his younger brother Zion tightly in his arms. Neither of them had said much after the rescue. They were too exhausted to talk, too overwhelmed to think. Ethan sat up front beside Mira. His face grim but calm. You made enemies today, she said softly. I don't care, Ethan replied. I made something better too. Mira glanced back at the boys and smiled. You always had a soft heart. Even in the war, Ethan chuckled. I didn't save them because I'm soft. I saved them because no one else would. That silence again. That heavy, meaningful silence that didn't need words by the time they reached the shelter. The night was already folding into dawn. Faint. Pink light stretched across the horizon as Ethan helped Teko and Zion inside. Their mother, bruised but healing, rushed forward. She knelt, pulled both boys into her arms, and wept. No words. Just sobs. Teko held on to her as if he never wanted to let go again. Zirin tucked his head into her chest, for the first time since the raid. The family was whole. Ethan stepped back to give them space, but as he turned to leave, a small hand caught his wrist. Teko looked up. Where are you going? Ethan hesitated. You're safe now. You don't need me anymore. But we do, Teko said, voice shaking. I need you. His mother looked up too, tears in her eyes. You saved us. All of us. Ethan gave a quiet nod. I only did what anyone should have done. Teko shook his head. No one else did. Only you. Zirin stepped forward, small arms wrapping around Ethan's leg. Don't go. Ethan looked down, startled. The boy barely knew him and yet here he was, clinging like a child to a father. Teko stood beside him, eyes shining. Then came the words, soft, unsure, but powerful. Can I call you Dad? Ethan froze. The question struck deeper than any bullet he'd ever taken. He looked into Teko's eyes and saw, it's more than a child. He saw trust. He saw love. He saw a bond no bloodline could create. Ethan knelt down slowly. "You can call me whatever you want," he said. "But if I'm going to be your dad, then I'll never leave your side. You okay with that?" Teko nodded fast, tears running down his face. Zion smiled, clutching Ethan tighter. Their mother watched silently, her hands shaking. "I don't have anything to give you," she said, voice full of emotion. "No land, no money. Just two boys and a tired heart." Ethan looked at her with kind eyes. "Then we're even. I don't have much either, but I do have enough space in my life for a family," she smiled, lips trembling. "Then, welcome to it." Weeks passed. The scars on their bodies slowly began to fade, but the wounds inside would take longer. Still, there was laughter now. Meals shared around the table. Ethan fixed up a second room in his shelter, turning it into a cozy space for the boys. They painted the walls together using leftover ship paint bright blues, greens, and a crooked little star that Zarin insisted looked like their old home planet. Teko began helping Ethan at the workshop. He was smart faster with his hands than most grown men. Ethan showed him how to repair small engines, how to weld clean lines, and even how to fly the old skimmer. Zarin started school at the Outpost Learning Center. He was shy at first, hiding behind Ethan's legs every morning. But soon he made friends. Children who didn't care about the color of his skin or the number of his fingers, just the size of his smile. Their mother, too, began to heal. She started a small garden near the shelter, using alien seeds she'd saved from her old home. They grew into strange but beautiful flowers, yellow ones, just like Teko remembered. Every evening, the family sat under the stars together, sometimes silent, sometimes laughing, but always together. One night, they lay on a blanket staring up at the sky. Teko turned to Ethan. "I used to think humans didn't care," he said. Ethan raised an eyebrow, and now, Teko smiled. "Now I know. One human can be more than enough." Ethan put an arm around the boy's shoulder. "And one little alien boy can change a man's whole world." Zarin giggled beside them. "Does that mean I'm your world too?" Ethan laughed. "You both are." They lay there under the sky. A human father, two alien sons, and a mother who had thought she'd lost everything. But instead, she had gained something new. A family, and sometimes, in the vast coldness of the galaxy, that's the rarest miracle of all.